So we'll start off with definitions. So mindfulness, I think there's lots of ways you can look at it, but I like to keep things simple for myself. And literally to me, mindfulness means to be mindful, and that means to be aware. So to be aware of where your mental focus is right now, and stay present with that focus, and to try and let everything else that's around while you're walking and everything with some practice. So it's a pretty easy way to be. So it's just about being aware. And meditation is just simply the practice of sustaining a period of mindfulness. So extending a moment of awareness to last for longer and longer. So why does this matter? Well, we'll start with happiness. And a lot of what you'll read, especially if you read a lot of really wise Buddhist monk type people have written some great stuff, and their focus is really that happiness is a choice. Happiness is something that comes from within us and not from outside us. And I think we spend a lot of our lives, more and more so in the modern world, desiring things and relationships and results, and we believe those things will bring us some happiness. But the resulting happiness from those things is short-lived, and it's actually there's scientific explanation behind that. And it's because those desires and the acquisition of them, they actually generate what's called a happiness chemical within your brain. So we sort of have four happiness chemicals, as people tend to refer to them: dopamine, endorphins, serotonin, and oxytocin. So without getting too stuck on those definitions, dopamine is the one it's the hit that you get. It's the buzz that you get when you desire something and when you achieve it. But it's designed physiologically to be really, really short-lived. Endorphins are the ones that kick in, and maybe from things like running a race or something like that. They're like the counterbalance to pain within your physiological system. And they can be much longer lasting, and you can get some pretty good highs off endorphins, as any long distance runner will tell you. But the ones I'd like to focus on, and the ones that come back to mindfulness and meditation, are things called serotonin and oxytocin, and particularly serotonin. So serotonin it's a chemical that we generate more of when we feel we're of value to people, when we feel we're of service. It's a chemical we generate more of in our brains when we feel like our service is valued by others. And it's also a chemical that we generate more of when we take space to be aware of our own minds, to be aware of what we're doing, and to think about things like compassion, and to start with things like self-compassion. So it's a big part of happiness, and this is a kind of a constantly reinforcing thing. So the better you feel about yourself, who you are as a human being, the more serotonin your body generates. And therefore, the better you feel, and the more valuable you feel, and the more inclined you are to go out in the world and serve others. And then you tend to feel valued more, and then you generate more chemical, and it's a self-fulfilling thing. So I should mention some things that meditation is and isn't. It definitely doesn't make you superhuman. It doesn't make you in any way better to anyone else. And I think if you've ever met anyone who's given you a really long lecture about how much they meditate and how wonderful they feel, sometimes it can really be unhelpful, because in some ways it can leave you ending up feeling like this person's in some way special, or this person has some talent that you don't have. And there isn't any special gift for this, and there isn't any special talent. It's just a simple practice, and something that you can just do and keep doing, and over time it delivers more and more value. So the idea behind meditation, or the real point of it, if you want to boil it down to everything that matters, is that it's about trying to learn the ability to create a separation between events that happen in your life and how you react to those events. So we're all prone to very, very deep emotional currents and to instant feelings, and the human beings are sort of built, we're designed to be able to feel emotions connected to events almost instantly. It happens so fast that we have no time to react from a rational perspective. And that design is there from way back when we were caveman type people, because we needed that kind of instant reaction to escape from kind of large scary animals that wanted to kill us and eat us. So it was sort of important, right? So we know now that we're not in ever-present danger all the time, and the long-term goal of meditation, especially from a Buddhist standpoint, but just purely from a practice perspective, is to try and generate an awareness of how you see yourself as a human being experiencing emotion, as opposed to just the fact that you're lost in it. So a good example of this is, and for me, it's anger. Anger's probably been my trigger throughout my life. And if you ever meet anyone who's clearly quite angry, you can ask them, what's going on with you right now, and they'll be able to tell you pretty instantly, I'm feeling really angry. And that's an interesting thing in itself, because just the fact that someone will express themselves from that third person perspective that they are feeling very angry means that there is a difference between being angry and feeling angry. And that difference is really important, because what it tells you is that mentally you have different states within your awareness. Sure, you have a state that's experiencing the emotion of anger or the emotion of fear or whatever that strong emotion is, but at the same time there's a part of you that is just able to be aware of the fact that you are experiencing. And it's that part, it's that awareness that we're looking to grow with meditation. And that awareness enables you to create a space between events that happen in your life and how you choose to react to them. It doesn't mean you're ever trying to shut down emotions and feelings, and I think it's really especially important in the workplace, where often maybe we can end up feeling like emotions aren't part of our work life, or we shouldn't be feeling stuff at work. And that's a really bad idea, because that tends to lead to repressed emotions, and that tends to lead to stress and unhappiness. What's much better is if you're able to happily, or not always happily, but you're able to experience your emotions as they happen. But you're able to understand that experiencing the emotions doesn't mean you have to react in a certain way, and to have enough space to think about how you choose to react afterwards. And I think I can tell you from my experience that practice of meditation over a period of time eventually starts to give you some of that benefit. I said I'd get into some bits of science. So some parts of it we're talking about happiness chemicals, but there's another thing I wanted to mention, and it's this thing called the Hawthorne effect. So this goes back to Chicago in the 1920s. There was a factory complex called the Hawthorne plant, I think it was called, and that's what it's named after. And they did a bunch of experiments there where they made real subtle changes in the working environment, and they were really simple things. Like they would change the lighting levels in the factory. They would make the lights slightly brighter. And what they were doing was they were trying to measure the effect of change on productivity. And what they found is that the smallest amount of change, and in fact even changes that weren't necessarily good or bad, they would just change, would for a short amount of time increase the productivity of that factory workforce. So obviously we're not talking about running ourselves like a factory, but that Hawthorne effect research has gone on and on since the 1920s and gone into lots and lots of different fields. And the various different scientists have discovered that it's a sort of a universal truth in everything we do. And you see it in things like dieting, and you see it in things like new gym habits, and you see it in things, anytime as people that we try to develop a new habit, with a lot of things, you get a very, very short-term kind of, oh, this is great. Like I just started going to the gym, and it's this new gym, and they have these great classes, and just suddenly I feel amazing, and I think I'm going to do this for the rest of my life because I just feel so good. And then you'll probably, and then sometimes you can find it really hard to explain why 2, 3, 4 weeks, however long later, it's like, hey, it doesn't seem to be making me feel as good anymore, and maybe this isn't the right gym for me after all, and actually I'm kind of busy this week and there's so much I need to do. And before you know it, that thing you started, that new gym or that whatever it is, or that diet is suddenly sort of faded away into the background. So my point here is that that can happen with anything. It can happen with mindfulness practice too. So the way to avoid that happening and developing any really good new habit, there's a few things to take into account. One is to be regular. One is to set aside some time that isn't impinged upon by something else. So the best time to meditate is in the morning, and generally speaking, and weirdly there is science behind this too, but I'm not going to bore you with the details, but it's between 4 a.m. and 7 a.m. That's the best window of time to meditate. It's when your mind is most open to being able to develop awareness. So if you can make a time in that window, it's great, but if you can't, it doesn't matter. It's way more important that you pick a time that isn't going to be impinged on by other things. So it's something that you can be regular about. So trying to be regular is important. And the other thing is, just two more things that I think are really important. The second one is to be able to forgive yourself a bit, to have that self-compassion, to understand that, you know what, I'm only human and I couldn't do my mindfulness practice today. I couldn't do my meditation because, stuff just happened. Things got in the way. Really important things came up. And that isn't a reason for me to not do it tomorrow or the next day. It can be if I get stuck on the fact that I feel like I might have failed somehow, but it doesn't have to be if I can just, realize that, you know what, life gets in the way sometimes and start again. So that's kind of important. And then the third thing that's really great, if you want to start any new habit in your life, and I'm going to stick with mindfulness for now, but it can be to anything, is get some support. So reach out to other people, join a group that's interested in doing meditation, take a class, maybe when COVID restrictions are lifted to some extent and classes become a thing we can do normally again, or even just grab someone else in your workplace that you know is interested in this and talk about it. And I think the more we talk about this stuff, the more that we know that in our work lives there are people that want to support us in these kinds of things, the easier that kind of stuff will get. So I'll talk about a couple of things. Again, this is a real intro session, so if I'm telling you stuff you already know, don't worry about it. And if I'm telling you stuff you didn't know, then yeah, hopefully I'm not steering you in the wrong direction. So I think I'll cover briefly a few different ideas about style and the purpose behind some meditations or mindfulness practices, and just some really quick ones, and probably the three main ones. One is to focus on the breath, and this is something that I do every day, so this is really familiar to me. It's pretty simple. It just requires that you can breathe and notice that you're breathing. So it's really well suited to me. And the great thing about focusing on the breath is it's very naturally peaceful and it's very naturally calming. So it's a great way to combat stress and anxiety in your life. And it's a great tool for if you have a life that's very busy and you have a lot of meetings and you have a lot of commitments. It really helps you make that space that helps you manage those commitments really effectively. The other one that's really popular is loving kindness. So this is a series of meditations where you're predominantly thinking about both your compassion for yourself and your compassion for others. So you're thinking about generating a force of joy to send out into the world and touch other people with. And it can be a really powerful experience to do loving kindness. It can be quite emotional. It can raise some really strong feelings in people. The first time I did a loving kindness meditation, I did cry. So not ashamed to admit that. And it's definitely not a bad thing. And the great thing about loving kindness, and again, there's really good science at Harvard Medical School that's behind this, that the more you think in terms of compassion for others, the better it makes you feel yourself. So loving kindness meditation are particularly good for supporting feelings of wellness and being uplifted within yourself. And again, like I said before, it goes around in circles. The better you feel, the more uplifted you feel, the more inclined you are to focus on loving kindness and so on and so forth. I was reading a study the other day, actually, which was a Harvard Medical School study. They took a bunch of Buddhist monks, Tibetan Buddhist monks, and over a period of years measured them at various points by hooking them up to an fMRI scanner and asking them to meditate on specific things. And they found these guys, predominantly guys, I think maybe all participants were male in this. I think that's pretty normal in the Buddhist monk community. But these guys had sort of something like an average of 15,000 plus hours of meditation in their lives. So it wasn't at all unusual for them to meditate for 4 or 5 hours every day, and to sometimes have 3 or 4 years at a time in a retreat where they meditate 12 hours a day. So pretty intense stuff. But they found that they could take a regular everyday person who'd gone through a very, very brief sort of bit of mindfulness training, and that hooking them up to an fMRI scanner, they could measure that if they asked that person to meditate for 30 seconds on a feeling of loving kindness, that the area in their brain which is associated with compassion for others would light up by a certain amount. What they found with these Tibetan monks was the area of their brains would light up in the same way, but by about 800% more than an average human being. So over time, what they've been able to sort of show with this study is that over time, the more you meditate, the better you get at feeling loving kindness and compassion for others, to a point where you can feel huge amounts of compassion and joy for others at the drop of a hat. And then the last one, last main type, is something called body scan. And this is a process of sort of starting from the head, going all the way down to your toes and back up again, and really focusing in intricate detail on various different parts of your body and the sensations going through your skin and joints, and what aches or pains you may be sitting in your body, and where you have aches and pains, actually resting in that pain and making it something of a focus of meditation in itself. So no surprise to know that body scans are amazing for healing and pain management. And actually a body scan meditation is something that's now recommended as an alternative pain management tool for people who suffer from chronic pain. So it can be that powerful. Okay, so I'm getting close to the end of talking. I don't want to bore everyone too much. So a few more things that are maybe useful to know. Mindfulness as a practice can be done anywhere and everywhere. So one of my favorite practices is mindful walking. Literally feeling the way my feet touch the floor and move as the weight shifts through my feet as I'm walking. And I can do that around the house, which is great. So especially in times of lockdown where we don't get to go anywhere, we're just walking around the house, just going from sort of my desk to the kitchen to make some coffee and back again. That can be a mindful sort of moment for me. But I can also go for longer walks. And I promise you can be out walking, crossing streets in busy traffic. You can be walking around busy airports. The more you practice it, the easier it gets. And at no point in time are you ever in danger or ever unaware of what's happening around you. You're just able to let it flow around you. You're able to notice traffic when you cross the road without becoming unmindful and without becoming unsafe. It's kind of cool. But there are other things you can do, and it can be applied to any of the most trivial kind of activities you do in your day. Cooking is a great way to be mindful. My wife is a keen gardener, and she will spend hours out in the garden, focused on nothing but plants and soil, and that's a very mindful experience for her. Eating's one of my favorite things. Taking time to just chew mouthfuls and just appreciate the food. And that's a great thing to do if you're ever traveling. I love being in a busy airport and being able to tune out and focus on, the food I need to be eating and consuming to get through my traveling day, and suddenly that whole airport experience becomes the greatest place to be in the world. Brushing your teeth is another good one, brushing your hair, there's just, so many. So other things, don't ever let anyone tell you that there's really rules, because there's no rules. There's maybe some guidelines, but it's way more flexible than you might think. So you don't have to have your eyes shut or your eyes open. There are styles of meditation where they encourage your eyes to be open. and there are styles of meditation when they encourage you to have your eyes shut, just because it works better for sensations or whatever, but there's really no rules, and different people can do different things different ways. The way you're seated is really not super important. Yeah, there's that classic thing where people get into a lotus position, cross-legged on the floor, but that doesn't have to be the way you meditate. Generally, seated is probably easier from a perspective of relaxed but good posture. But, if you've got back pain or back problems, you can meditate lying down. Again, I'd probably say don't choose to meditate lying down, and also choose to meditate at like 11 o'clock at night after a big meal or whatever, because that's going to be conducive more to sleep than to mindfulness. But yeah, there's really no rules on that. And then the other thing is when you meditate and for how long. Having a schedule is great. It is honestly the best thing, but if you can't have a schedule, you can still enjoy moments of mindfulness, and you can still enjoy meditation, and you can still get something out of it. And the other thing is that the length of time that you choose to meditate is really up to you. So I guess I would meditate maybe half an hour every morning, and that's just my routine. I get up at 5:30 every day, and meditation comes first, and then my day starts really nice. But it doesn't have to be half an hour. And there's a really, really wonderful Zen Buddhist saying that I love so much. And it goes something like, you should take 20 minutes to be mindful every day. And if you find that you don't have time for 20 minutes, you should take an hour. And that's the best way to look at it. And take whatever time you can. The important thing is that what your mind is telling you, if you feel like you're under time pressure to do something, is that actually the problem here is the time pressure. The problem here is not the thing that you're putting off doing. Okay, so I had a brief note. I've got some really brief, like half-line notes in front of me, and that is on resources. So there are lots of different ways you can start getting into meditation. Headspace is something that is super, super common with a lot of people. And Headspace is something I believe you can actually do that through Netflix now, and also you can get an app on your phone for Headspace, and there are plenty of other things. There's another popular app called Calm, and all of these things tend to start you off like nice and small, so 5-minute meditations, 10-minute meditations, 15-minute meditations, that kind of thing. There's also, and this is a resource that was shared to me by somebody, by Natalie in our software team, and I'm just going to drop this in the chat. There's a URL in the chat, which is for a website by someone called Tara Brock, and she does a whole lot of guided meditations, and they're all free, and you can download them and listen to them, and there's tons of other resources that do podcast meditations and things. So if you like the idea of someone helping you through it, then those kinds of things are a really good place to go. And then one more thing. I'll just drop that in there. Eventually it will upload. There's also a PDF in the chat, and that just has some of the stuff that I've been talking about. So it's just something that I put together, science of meditation, science of mindfulness rather, and it just tries to, it's looked through a whole ton of university college studies and medical articles, and just tried to pull out some of the highlights of what we do and don't know about the science behind meditation in terms of how it can helpfully impact things like mental health, how it can helpfully impact relationship development between people, and lots of other things. So it's a couple of pages. It has a bunch of URLs that may or may not make for useful reading, and it has some recommended reading books as well. And the first one on that list is the one I'd recommend most to everyone. It's a book called Monk's Guide to Happiness, Meditation in the 21st Century. And it's by a Tibetan monk called Gelong Thubchen, who just wrote a really beautiful book. It's really easy to read, it's really short, and it's not too expensive. And it interweaves his life story, how he went from being someone who was kind of messed up to taking vows as a monk, and he now spends his life in outreach, basically teaching mindfulness and meditation across the world. And it interweaves his life story with some really, really practical advice and some really easy to read advice about why meditation matters and why it should matter to you.